Many people cling to the notion that Friday the 13th brings bad luck, just like going under a ladder, running into a black cat, or breaking a mirror. It has even given rise to a horror movie franchise, a late 19th century secret organization, and companies deciding to omit to have a 13th floor listed on their elevator numbering. So exactly when did the practice of this superstition start? And is it real? Hey guys, before we start, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Although it's common knowledge that Friday the 13th is unlucky, it was not always the case. Nobody considered Fridays, which also happen to fall on the 13th day of the month, to be particularly significant until the late 1800s. While the number 12 has traditionally represented completeness in Western cultures, such as the 12 months in the zodiac signs, the 12 gods of Olympus, the 12 labors of Hercules, the 12 days of Christmas, and the 12 tribes of Israel are just a few examples, its successor 13 has a history as a sign of bad luck. For instance, the 1755 BCE Babylonian legal text Hammurabi Code of Laws, a collection of 282 rules, is said to have removed the 13th law from its list of legal rules. Despite the fact that this was most likely a typing error, superstitious believers occasionally cite this as evidence for the number 13's long-standing bad luck. The fear of the number 13 has even earned a psychological term, triskaidekaphobia, in today's society. But before we get to why Friday the 13th is unlucky and the origins of this superstition, what are some of the bad things that's happened on Friday the 13th?
Rapper was shot inside of a BMW while stopped at a red light on Koval and Flamingo. And we all know the story. He then died 6 days later. The shooting happened after a Mike Tyson fight against Bruce Sheldon at MGM Grand. And then there was a brawl inside of the lobby right after that fight. Tupac was in the car with Marion Suge Knight, who was grazed by a bullet. No one has ever been arrested for Tupac's murder.
Friday, September the 13th, 1996 was a tragic day for hip-hop when the legendary rapper Tupac Shakur died from gunshot injuries in a Las Vegas hospital. Shakur and Suge Knight were injured from a drive-by shooting on September the 7th after attending the Bruce Seldon and Mike Tyson boxing match at the MGM Grand Hotel and Casino.
Welcome to Giglio, Italy. It was exactly 1 week ago at 9:30 at night that approximately 4,200 people lived through their own Poseidon adventure when their cruise ship hit the rocks. They were on the Costa Concordia. At over 950 feet in length, it is the largest ship to ever end up like this.
On January the 13th, 2012, a peaceful Friday of cruising off the Tuscan coast turned chaotic and deadly as the Costa Concordia Cruise Ship struck a reef off the Isola del Giglio island and began to tilt. The ship came to a rest on its side in the shallow waters. Survivors had to be airlifted to shore by a helicopter. On that day, 32 people died, and the captain was eventually convicted of manslaughter in 2015.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Two very big words. The action I am taking will open up access to up to $50 billion of very important and a large amount of money for states and territories and localities in our shared fight against this disease.
Friday, March 13, 2020 could be considered the first official day of the pandemic in the U.S. Then President Donald Trump declared a national emergency in the United States. The World Health Organization declared the pandemic the previous Wednesday, March 11, 2020.
13th, 1951, the day the Kaw and Missouri rivers rose like never before.
There was $1 billion in flood damage in 1951. Now that would be $2 or $3 billion probably. There were 500,000 people evacuated. There were 150 communities that suffered major or record flooding, and two state capitals, the Topeka and Jeff City, were both suffered major flood damage during that flood.
Kansas experienced record-breaking amounts of rain and flooding. On Friday the 13th, 1951, the state of Kansas was hit with over 25 inches of rain. The cities of Manhattan, Lawrence, and Topeka were most affected, and over 2 million acres of land were damaged by the flood. The storm also affected oil tanks, some of which caught fire and exploded. There were passengers stuck on trains for 4 days, and at its highest, the flood exceeded previous records by 4 to 9 feet.
This is the story of 8 Swedish airmen on a highly secret mission. Lost without a trace over the open sea, victims of the international spy game between NATO and the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War.
A Swedish flight disappeared while flying over the Baltic Sea on Friday the 13th, 1952. And for 40 years, the Swedish government stuck by the story that the plane was merely performing training exercises. However, National Geographic reported that in the 90s, it was leaked that crew members were actually spying on the Soviet Union for NATO, even though Sweden was officially neutral during the Cold War. Russia responded with its own confession. A Russian pilot told a Swedish diplomat that he had shot the plane down.
In honor of Friday the 13th, we're asking, are you superstitious?
No, not at all.
A little bit. I wouldn't call myself a superstitious person, no.
Do you believe in any sort of superstitions?
Yes, but not Friday the 13th.
That's okay. What do you believe in?
Like you can't walk over somebody because it'll stop them from growing.
So, how did the date of Friday become mirrored in the minds as an unlucky one? Certainly, the idea was firmly implanted in the cultural consciousness by 1980, with the slasher flick Friday the 13th was released. The hockey mask villain of that tale, Jason Voorhees, has taken on a life of his own, with a total of 12 films and multiple comic books. Credit for popularizing the Friday the 13th myth often goes to a New Yorker named Captain William Fowler. Fowler sought to remove the enduring stigma surrounding the number 13, and particularly the unwritten rule about not having 13 guests at a dinner table, by founding an exclusive society called the 13 Club. The group dined regularly on the 13th day of the month in room 13 of the Knickerbocker Cottage, a popular watering hole Fowler owned from 1863 to 1883. Before sitting down for a 13th-course dinner, members would pass beneath a ladder and a banner reading Morituri te salutamus, Latin for those of us who are about to die, salute you. 4 former U.S. presidents, Chester A. Arthur, Grover Cleveland, Benjamin Harrison, and Theodore Roosevelt would join the 13th Club rank at one time or another. So, how did Friday the 13th become unlucky, and when did it become superstitious? Folklore historians like Donald Dosey, author of Holiday, Folklore, Phobias, and Fun, suggest that Friday the 13th actually comes from 2 separate superstitions rooted in ancient history. Nordic mythology tells a tale of 12 gods gathering for a dinner party when the 13th guest walked in uninvited. The guest was Loki, a mischievous trickster god. Loki took his bow and arrow and shot Baldur the Beautiful, a god who represents joy and gladness. Baldur's death brought darkness and mourning into the world, and possibly lent the concept of a dinner party with 13 guests a shadow of misfortune.
But behold, the hand of him that betrayeth me is with me on the table. And truly the Son of Man must die as God has determined, but woe unto that man by whom he is betrayed.
It can't be. It can't be. It's not possible. Name the traitor, Lord.
According to biblical tradition, Jesus and his 12 apostles were among the 13 diners present at the Last Supper on Maundy Thursday, one of whom was Judas, who betrayed him. Jesus' crucifixion day, Good Friday, fell the following day. So the seating arrangement at the Last Supper is believed to have given rise to a long-standing Christian superstition that having 13 guests at a table was a bad omen, specifically that it was courting death. However, according to Dr. Simon Broner, professor of American Studies and Folklore at Pennsylvania State University, claims that there's a grain of truth to the Last Supper theory, but the problem is that there's not much of a connection to the modern belief. Broner says it may be a case of religious folklore that rose to explain a belief. In numerology, the number 13 is also considered unlucky because of its place after the number 12. That is because in numerology, or the study of the symbolism of numbers, 12 is associated with completeness, whole, perfect, and harmonious, as seen in the 12 apostles, 12 Olympic gods, 12 animals in a Chinese horoscope, and 12 months in the Gregorian calendar. 13 by default was considered awkward, ungainly, and odd. Friday's association has a weaker background. It has been suggested that Friday carries a certain meaning in a Christian tradition. For example, it was on Friday that Cain killed his brother Abel in the myth of the 2 brothers. And it was Friday that Jesus was crucified, a day now known as Good Friday. However, there is no record of Friday the 13th being statistically more tragic than any other day of the year. To Dr. Broner, Friday the 13th is just a convenient milestone for people who are looking to trace bad luck to a certain cause, but there is nothing special about the date itself. After all, the number 13 is apparently considered lucky in some countries like Italy. Hey guys, we come to the end of the video. Let me know in the comment section below if you're superstitious about Friday the 13th. Also, Also, if you liked the video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Until then, we'll see you next time.